Hello, everyone. My name is Charlene Lee, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about one of my favorite things to do, which is to question everything. So, for those disruptors that are out there, you know this is a common practice that we have to do because that's what we do as disruptors. We question everything. And this is not done from a place of being obnoxious or just trying to make trouble. We fundamentally believe that the world is great. We're really grateful for everything that the world has given us. But we also fundamentally believe that it could be better. We look at the status quo, we're like, it's okay, it's fine, it may be even great. But what else are we missing out there? There is this innate curiosity that disruptors have about what could be better? What could it look like? How could we be growing more, faster, be more efficient, have more impact? And so, in many ways, disruptors are running this really interesting place. They're like on this knife's edge of saying, I know the status quo here is safe, it's comfortable, and people are pretty satisfied. But how could it be better? And this is especially important right now because in a time of great uncertainty and chaos, the instinct is to pull back. It's to find that solid footing, to find that solid ground, and find the places where we can be safe. We can feel like things aren't being torn apart because it's so disruptive out there anyways. So it's especially hard now because the things I hear from a lot of executives, a lot of leaders I'm talking to is, um, this is not the time to disrupt. This is not the time to question things. We know what works. We're going to stick with our knitting. We're going to double down and stay safe and not go forward. And I can be okay with that. I can be totally fine with that approach if and only if we have looked at the alternatives. We have questioned our base assumptions and we've looked into that future and we said, no, that is not what we want to do. That future is in many ways not the direction we want to go. The customers aren't there. The risk is too great. Our organization isn't capable. Then I'm okay with staying in the status quo. What I don't think is right and I don't think is acceptable, and I think, frankly, we're not doing our customers and our colleagues any favors. We're doing them a disservice in many ways, is we don't go through the exercise of questioning those assumptions to say, do they hold still true? Do we believe them to be true or not, rather than assuming that they are? And so therefore, we need to have the intellectual humility, the ability to say, maybe what we believe is wrong. Maybe what we could do is take a look at where those cognitive blind spots are and to really understand what's out there before we make an assumption that what's out there is absolutely wrong. This is incredibly difficult to do. And what I have found organizations doing this is a certain mindset to be able to question everything. So I want to take a minute now and just welcome the people who are on the live stream. I want to say hi to Sandy Adam. Great, thanks for joining us. I'm Tom Jones. Both thanks for joining. And Julio, so much. It's great to see you here too as well. Please share where you're coming from. And then also, when are some places where you have questioned things that you have wondered about and said, well, this is something that I think is not going the right way. What did you do to prepare yourself to ask those questions? And one of the things that I wanted to share are some questions that I've come across. This is coming from Warren Berger, who wrote this wonderful book a few years ago called The Book of Beautiful Questions. There's some questions. The book is just filled with questions, not necessarily the answers, but questions that you can ask yourself. So some of the things, for example, is, do you see yourself as a soldier or as a scout? Do you see as somebody who marches based on the orders? Or do you see yourself as somebody who goes out in advance and looks for the opportunities, looks for the danger, but also the places where you can go move forward? Would you rather be right? Or would you rather understand what is going on? When you ask those two kinds of questions, that's a very different thing. Is it more important for you to be sure and be right and to be the person whose opinion is the one that we're going to be following and moving forward with? Or are you going to prefer to be a person who's going to try to seek to understand, has that curiosity to see what the world looks like? I look at it this way. Do you seek out and really solicit opposing views? Do you look for people who are in contradiction to the way that you think about the world? And then finally, do you like that sort of interesting surprise that says, wow, I didn't know that I was wrong? Is that when you find out that you've been wrong, when you've been mistaken, do you find pleasure in that? Are you pleasantly surprised by that? Or are you taken aback and have to retreat to recover? These are the things that underpin intellectual humility, the ability to ask these questions, the ability to question everything that is in front of us. And I think that's what's needed right now, because if we don't do this, then we are assuming that the world that existed before everything exploded in our faces was the world that we still live in. And it's clearly not. So we need to find that ability, that resilience, that humility in ourselves, in our organizations, to be able to move forward and ask things. So I just want to say hello to a couple other people. Wow, we're grateful to have all these people joining. We have people from Curacao. We have people from New York City. Arturo, thank you for joining us. It's interesting you're from Chile, but you're in China. Wow, so international. Inilka, coming from Nicaragua. Ira, great to see you from Lee Valley. Sandy, this is great. I love what you're saying here. You see yourself as a scout, and I love this comment. You got lots of arrows in the back to prove it. That's a great comment. We have people coming in from Singapore and also Pravin from Nepal. And thank you, Sam, for liking my living room. This is a new setup that I have. And I find it to be so much quieter than my other office, which is right on the border of a park. And Sandras, thank you for joining from Indonesia, and Arifem from Canada. This is fantastic because I wanted to talk a little bit about also just how do you question everything? What's the methodology you can go at? And this can be, again, looking at your strategic plan and seeing what are the base assumptions and really questioning in every single one of them. And that's just a good best practice to do. But oftentimes we assume our strategic plan still applies and we just modify a little bit on the edges. But this is a time and place to go back and look at every single element of that plan and say, is it true? Can we go and test it? How do we know that's true? And the other thing to be thinking about is also, what are the beliefs that we hold true? And in particular, do our beliefs still move us forward, or are they holding us back? And I also think that if you think about the way the world works, thinking about how it could potentially work in the future, this is a really hard thing to do. And I wanted to share an exercise that I just came across. And so I thought this was great. It's something called In a World. And I just wanted to share that. Let me get the screen up so you can see it. Literally, this came into my inbox this morning. So I just wanted to share it. I thought it was so fantastic. It comes from my friend, David Berkowitz, who is one of the smartest people I know when it comes to marketing. And not only is he that, but he is an incredible human being. So if you get a chance to go see some of the work that he's doing right now at serialmarketer.net, I highly encourage you to go check it out and also see the community that he's building there. It's absolutely fantastic. And he shared this approach from Mark Avnet, who was a colleague of his, who's now the founder of Converging Arts. And the things that this is an exercise that says, in a world where something is true, the big disruptive thought is something is really different. What this means is that something will do something different. This could impact brands and products in this way, and we could test this by X. And the example that David provided is very, very timely. So I just want to read through it because I think it's so powerful. You may have heard in the news today that some brands like Nike have really pulled back from advertising on Facebook because of its reluctance to and inability to block racist and inflammatory comments. And so this is an example in a world where there is such a backlash to Facebook that the repercussions are too high for brands to advertise there, right? So in a world where this is actually happening now, you can imagine that this assumption that we've always challenged, because the big disruptive thought is that we need to cut Facebook ad to zero and reallocate that budget elsewhere because it's not in line with what we believe is to be true and in line with our values. And frankly, it's really hurting us if our ads are showing up next to these inflammatory videos. What this means is that people and businesses will do what? You could potentially lose a lot of traffic from one of your top or second most important digital channels. And the impact on this is that you could not be generating awareness and demand, and sales could drop through the cliff. But you could test this then by taking a small brand budget, testing 40, that's spending at least 40% of the digital ads through Facebook, and test it for 30 days and see what actually happens. So this is that big disruptive thought, right? That could you actually just cut off the spending that you have, really questioning this assumption that you had to be in this one really important channel, and questioning the fact that maybe this isn't going to work for us. Could we basically make up that channel that we had and maybe even be more effective someplace else? So in a world where you make these assumptions, this is the process by which you can start questioning everything. You can run through these hypotheses, run through these scenarios, and say, what could happen in a world that looks like this? And it takes a lot, again, of intellectual humility, of confidence also, in your ability to think about things in a very, very different way. This is not a natural place for us to be. We tend to gravitate through something that is maybe 10% off of what the world looks like. So I think in a world of, when we're thinking about how things could be completely differently, that gives us the framework and the ability to now question all these assumptions that we've ever had. So I encourage you to take a step back from the day-to-day. Step back and think about how are you going to approach the questioning of everything. And one of the biggest challenges that we as disruptors have is how do we do this without alienating all the other people who are around? And I think this goes back to that humility and also gratitude for where we are today. When I say question everything, it doesn't mean that we have all the answers. It just says, with the greatest respect, with tremendous humility, we're going to ask, is what we're doing today the right thing? And I find that having that gratefulness and that humility to approach the conversations in that way is what allows disruptors to be able to talk to other people who may not be ready for that disruption, to be able to have that really difficult conversation. So really think about before you start going and blowing things up, because that is our natural inclination as disruptors, is to go and question things and say, like, why does it work this way? It could be so much better. Take a minute, have some empathy for the people who are already living in that space, comfortable in that space, and really understand, what is it about the status quo? What are the things that they hold to be true? These sacred truths, these elephants, whatever you want to call them, these sacred truths and beliefs that they hold to be true. How can you begin to have a conversation with them to say, with the greatest respect, we need to take a look at this? Because if we don't, we are not being true to ourselves. We're not being intellectually honest with ourselves about what the possibilities are. So I think what I would like to do at this point is to see if there are any other questions coming in, to say hello to a couple other people. Mina, thanks for joining from the Philippines. We see people coming from Dallas, Texas too, as well, Indonesia. So thank you so much for joining today. I'll be definitely going back into the feeds and seeing if there are any additional comments. But I do want to say a couple quick things here. You can, again, go and see some of the great content coming at serialmarketer.com. I'm sorry, serialmarketer.net. And as always, if you'd like to stay in touch with me, my contact information is, I'm at charlinglee.com. And if you'd like to see some of the other broadcasts that I've been doing, you can see them at charlinglee.com/events. And the last thing I would say is that if you would like to be able to connect with other disruptors, people who are also trying to question everything, we are building a community at quantum-networks.com. And this is a place where disruptors can come and get support, because the purpose of that community is to support disruptors in their quest to create exponential change in their organizations, in their communities, and in society. So I encourage you to come and join us, figure out how we can start questioning everything, and hopefully we can advance the world and make it the world that we want to be able to see. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.